I signed the divorce agreement with a smile. 50-50 split of all business assets? My husband Derek said, sliding the papers across the mahogany table in his lawyer's office. That's more than fair, Mira. Considering what? Considering he'd been sleeping with my former best friend Vanessa for 3 years? Considering they'd plotted to push me out of the company I built from nothing? Considering that in my past life, this exact meeting had ended with me having a stress-induced heart attack on this very floor, my body crumpling like discarded paper, while Vanessa stood over me with crocodile tears and Derek checked his watch, annoyed that my dying was making him late for their dinner reservation? I picked up the pen. 24 karat gold, a gift from Derek on our 5th anniversary. Back when I still believed his lies, back when I thought the late nights and mysterious charges on our credit card were just him being forgetful, distracted, busy with work. Back when I was stupid enough to love him. Of course, I said, my voice steady as glass. Fair is fair. Vanessa sat beside him, her hand possessively on his thigh, manicured nails drumming a little rhythm of victory against his expensive suit. She couldn't hide her smirk. The corners of her mouth kept twitching upward, like she was trying to suppress laughter at a funeral. In my previous life, I hadn't known about their affair until it was too late. I'd signed these same papers, walked out of this office on shaking legs, and collapsed in the parking garage, dead at 37, from a broken heart and broken dreams, and the crushing weight of betrayal that had literally stopped my heart. The paramedics said it was a massive coronary event, brought on by acute stress. The medical examiner's report listed it as natural causes, but I knew the truth. Derek and Vanessa had killed me as surely as if they'd held a pillow over my face. But, God, the universe, karma, or maybe just cosmic irony had given me a second chance. I woke up 6 months ago in my bed, Derek snoring beside me with the particular rumbling sound he made after drinking too much wine, and the calendar on my phone reading March 15th, exactly 1 year before my death. 1 year before this meeting. 1 year to prepare. The first few days, I thought I was losing my mind. I'd wake up gasping, clutching my chest where the pain had been, expecting to see hospital lights and hear the beeping of monitors. Instead, I'd see our bedroom ceiling with the crack in the plaster I'd meant to have fixed, smell Derek's bourbon breath on the pillow next to mine, and realize with a shock that felt like ice water through my veins that I was alive. Young. Well, younger. Healthy. And I remembered everything. Every betrayal, every lie, every casual cruelty, every board meeting where Derek took credit for my ideas, every night he came home late smelling like Vanessa's perfume while I waited with dinner growing cold, every sympathetic phone call from Vanessa where she encouraged me to be more understanding of my husband's needs while she was fucking him in hotel rooms paid for with my money. I remembered dying, and I remembered the moment right before when Derek leaned over my gurney in the ambulance and whispered, "Just let go, Mira. It's easier this way. For everyone." He'd wanted me dead. It made the divorce settlement simpler, I suppose. 100% is better than 50%, even if you have to wait for probate. Initial here, here, and here, the lawyer droned, his voice the particular monotone of someone who'd facilitated the dissolution of 100 marriages and felt nothing anymore. This stipulates that all assets of Chen Industries will be divided equally between both parties. I initialed. Each stroke of the pen felt like a small victory. Derek's relief was palpable. His shoulders dropped, his jaw unclenched, and he actually smiled. A real smile. The kind I used to live for back when I thought we were partners, when I thought in sickness and in health meant something. What he didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that Chen Industries was now just a shell. An empty, pretty shell with impressive-looking paperwork and a few million in operational accounts to maintain the illusion of legitimacy. The real money, the patents, the international contracts, the subsidiary companies that generated 90% of our revenue, I'd transferred them 6 months ago to a new corporate structure. Chen Holdings, registered in my maiden name, Liu, in Delaware, with ironclad operating agreements that excluded Derek entirely. Operating agreements he'd need a team of forensic accountants and corporate lawyers to even find, much less understand. It had been so easy, because I'd built this empire myself, every brick and beam of it. I knew where every dollar flowed, which accounts fed which, which subsidiaries were profitable, and which were just tax shelters. I knew the business inside and out because I'd created it from nothing, from a single water filtration patent and a dream of making clean water accessible to everyone. And Derek? Derek had always been content to show up at galas, shake hands with clients I'd cultivated, take credit for innovations I'd developed, and cash checks he hadn't earned. He had no idea how the sausage was made. He couldn't read a P&L statement without help. He thought operating agreement was something you signed when you leased a car. And the house? Vanessa asked, leaning forward. Her voice had that breathy quality she affected when she wanted something, the little girl tone that I'd once found endearing and now recognized as manipulation. In Westchester? Joint asset, the lawyer confirmed, not even looking up from his documents. Will be sold and profits divided equally. I nodded graciously. The house where I'd almost died choking on my own tears, where I'd walked through rooms that echoed with loneliness, where I'd slept alone while Derek invented business trips and late meetings. The house that held nothing but bad memories and the faint scent of Vanessa's perfume in places she should never have been. Good riddance. What they also didn't know, I'd bought a penthouse in Manhattan 4 months ago under an LLC. $15 million, paid in cash from Chen Holdings' operating account. They could have the Westchester house with its leaking roof and outdated kitchen and ghosts of happier times that never really existed. I'd already moved my clothes out piece by piece during Derek's business trips with Vanessa. My books, my grandmother's china, the photographs of my parents, all of it, systematically removed and relocated to my new home while Derek was too busy fucking my best friend to notice his wife was disappearing. Well, Derek said, standing and extending his hand across the table. His wedding ring caught the light. I'd stopped wearing mine 2 months ago, and he'd never noticed. I'm glad we could do this civilly, Mira. No need to make things uglier than they need to be. Civilly? As if he hadn't broken every vow he'd made. As if he hadn't conspired to steal my company. As if he hadn't wanted me dead. I shook his hand. Firm grip, steady eye contact, the professional courtesy I'd show to any business acquaintance. The old Mira would have been crying, mascara running, begging him to reconsider, would have offered to go to counseling, to change, to be better, prettier, more understanding, would have blamed herself for his infidelity and believed him when he said it was her fault for being married to her work. The new Mira just smiled. Of course, Derek. I want what's best for both of us. Vanessa's smirk widened. She thought she'd won. She thought she was getting the house, the lifestyle, the successful husband. She had no idea she was getting the losing lottery ticket, the wooden horse full of nothing, the emperor with no clothes. I gathered my copy of the signed agreement, slid it into my briefcase, the Hermes briefcase I'd bought myself last month, because I could, because Chen Holdings was flush with cash, and I deserved nice things. Mira, Vanessa said, standing as well. She had the audacity to try to hug me. I hope we can still be friends. I know this is hard, but... No, I said simply, stepping back. We can't. Her smile faltered. But you fucked my husband for 3 years, Vanessa. We're not friends. We were never friends. And if I never see you again, it will be too soon. The room went silent. Derek's lawyer coughed. Vanessa's face flushed red. Well, Derek said, trying to recover. There's no need to be nasty. Nasty? I turned to him, and I let him see it. Just for a moment, I let him see the cold fury beneath my pleasant mask. Derek, I haven't even begun to be nasty. This is me being civil. This is me being generous. You have no idea how much worse I could have made this for you. I walked out before he could respond, my heels clicking on the marble floor, echoing in the suddenly quiet office. Behind me, I heard Vanessa whisper, "What was that about?" And Derek, confused and uneasy, "I don't know, she's been weird lately." I smiled to myself as I stepped into the elevator. Weird. That was one way to describe a woman who'd been given a second chance at life and decided to use it for revenge. The real story started 6 months ago, on March 15th. I opened my eyes to sunlight streaming through curtains I'd donated to Goodwill 2 weeks before my death. The light hit them at the exact angle it always had on spring mornings, making patterns on the ceiling I'd stared at 1,000 times during sleepless nights. Derek's arm was heavy across my waist, possessive even in sleep. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed it all. The affair, the divorce, the heart attack, the bright light, and the sensation of my soul leaving my body. Then I saw the date on my phone, March 15th, 2019. 1 year before everything fell apart. My heart hammered in my chest. The same heart that would give out in 12 months if I let history repeat itself. The same heart that had literally broken from betrayal. I could feel it racing, pounding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. And for a terrifying moment, I thought maybe I was having another heart attack. Maybe this was some dying hallucination, but no. My chest didn't hurt. My breathing was fine. I was 36 years old, not 37. I was alive. I slid out of bed carefully, moving slowly so Derek's arm flopped onto my pillow instead of waking him. In the bathroom, I stared at my reflection. 36, not 37. The stress lines around my eyes were less pronounced. I hadn't started stress eating yet, so I was 10 pounds lighter, still fitting into the size 6 dresses I'd bought on our honeymoon. My hair was longer, healthier, because I hadn't started pulling it out in clumps during anxiety attacks. I looked like myself, but I felt like a stranger in my own skin. Because I remembered dying. I remembered the crushing pain in my chest that felt like an elephant sitting on my sternum. I remembered Vanessa's fake concern, her hand on my shoulder as she told the paramedics about my history of anxiety. I remembered Derek's barely concealed impatience as they worked on me, the way he checked his phone, scrolled through messages that were probably from her. I remembered flatlining in the ambulance, the long, steady beep of the monitor, the sensation of floating up away from my body, seeing myself from above, small and broken and so stupid, and then waking up here. 1 year earlier, like the universe had hit rewind, given me a do-over, a chance to not be the naive idiot who died of a broken heart. I spent the first week in a daze, testing the boundaries of this bizarre reality. Everything was exactly as I remembered. Derek left for work at 7:30, his tie slightly askew because he'd never learned to tie it properly despite 10 years of practice. He'd kiss my forehead absently, grab his coffee in the travel mug I'd prepared, and leave. He'd come home at 9:30 smelling like Vanessa's perfume, Chanel No. 5, which I knew that scent now intimately, could pick it out in a crowd, in a department store, in my own fucking bedroom. Vanessa called me daily, her voice dripping with false friendship. "How are you, babe? How's Derek? How's work? Did you see that article about relationship counseling I sent you?" Every conversation a fishing expedition, gathering intel she'd later weaponize. In my previous life, I'd confided everything to her, my fears, my insecurities, my marital problems. I'd cried on her shoulder when Derek seemed distant. She'd stroked my hair and told me everything would be okay. Then she'd gone straight to Derek's bed and used my vulnerability against me. This time, when she called, I was vague. "Everything's great. Busy with work. How are you?" I could hear the frustration in her voice when I didn't give her ammunition. The company board meeting on March 22nd went exactly as it had before. Derek suggested expanding into cryptocurrency, leaning back in his chair with the confidence of someone who'd never had a bad idea in his life. "It's the future," he said. "If we don't get in now, we'll miss the wave." It was a terrible idea, a venture that would lose $3 million before I finally pulled the plug in my previous life. $3 million that could have gone to R&D, to employee bonuses, to the expansion into South America that I'd wanted to pursue. In my past life, I'd supported him publicly, desperate to make him feel valued, to make our partnership seem real. "I think Derek's onto something," I'd said, and the board had approved it because they trusted my judgment. This time I smiled politely and said, "Let me think about it. I'd like to see more detailed projections before we commit that kind of capital." Derek's smile tightened. He wasn't used to me questioning him. "Of course," he said. "I'll put together a presentation." He never did, because Derek didn't know how to put together financial projections. He didn't understand blockchain technology beyond the buzzwords he'd picked up from tech blogs. He was all surface, no substance. The cryptocurrency venture died quietly, and we saved $3 million. And I began to plan. The first order of business: understanding what I had. I spent late nights in my office at Chen Industries, door closed, going through every file, every contract, every operating agreement with a fine-toothed comb. I mapped out the entire corporate structure on a whiteboard, drawing connections between parent companies and subsidiaries, tracking money flows, identifying which entities generated profit and which were just overhead. Chen Industries was worth approximately $847 million. I'd started it 10 years ago with a $50,000 loan from my parents, a loan I'd paid back within 2 years, and a revolutionary water filtration system I'd designed in graduate school. The patents alone were worth a fortune. We'd expanded into industrial filtration, residential systems, municipal contracts, and, my crowning achievement, a portable filtration device for disaster relief that had won contracts with FEMA, the UN, and multiple international NGOs. It wasn't just profitable, it was making a difference. Clean water in Flint, in Puerto Rico after the hurricane, in developing nations where waterborne diseases killed millions. I'd built something that mattered, something that saved lives, and Derek had contributed exactly nothing to the technical side. He'd joined the company after we married, after I'd already established our first major contracts and our first manufacturing facility. I'd given him the title of COO despite his having no operations experience, no engineering background, no qualifications beyond an MBA from a mediocre program, and a charming smile. I'd given him the position because I loved him, because I wanted us to build something together, because I was young and stupid and believed in partnership and happily ever after. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't discover until it was too late in my previous life, was that Derek and Vanessa had been strategically positioning themselves to force me out. She'd been feeding him insider information from her position as VP of Strategy at Aquapure, our biggest competitor, helping him identify weaknesses in our structure, gaps in our market coverage, vulnerabilities he could exploit. Together, they'd been building a case that I was an unstable leader, that my emotional decisions were hurting the company. Derek would plant seeds in board meetings. Mira's very passionate, sometimes too passionate, while Vanessa would spread rumors in industry circles about my difficult management style. In my previous life, they'd succeeded. The board voted to remove me as CEO 3 months before the divorce, in a meeting I wasn't invited to attend. I'd shown up at the office to find my access card deactivated, my assistant crying, and Derek sitting in my office with a sympathetic expression that didn't reach his eyes. "It's for the best," he'd told me. "You've been under so much stress. This way you can rest, recover." And I'd been so devastated, so betrayed, that when he served divorce papers a week later, I'd signed them without fighting. Take half the company I built, I'd thought. Just let me escape this nightmare. But half of $847 million was still $423.5 million, enough for Derek and Vanessa to live like royalty, enough for him to sell his shares to Aquapure at an inflated price, because Vanessa had arranged the deal, enough for them to buy a house in the Hamptons and plan a destination wedding I'd heard about through mutual acquaintances. Except this time, there was no $847 million to split, because this time I knew what was coming. I started with the patents. Chen Industries held 73 patents in water filtration technology, each one representing months or years of research and development, late nights in the lab, failed prototypes, and breakthrough moments. In my previous life, they'd been part of the divorce settlement, split down the middle. Derek had sold his half to Aquapure for $200 million, pennies on the dollar compared to their real value, but he'd been desperate for cash to fund his lifestyle with Vanessa. 3 weeks after my rebirth, on April 7th, I filed paperwork to transfer all patents to a new entity, Chen Holdings LLC. I did my research first, spent hours with a corporate attorney I'd hired from a Manhattan firm, someone outside our usual circles who didn't know Derek and couldn't be compromised. Her name was Judith Chen. No relation. A shark in Armani suits with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. "You want to move your patents to a new entity," she said, reading over the list I'd provided. 73 patents, billions in potential value, and you don't want your husband to know. "Can it be done legally?" I asked. She smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "Mrs. Chen, may I call you Mira? Everything can be done legally if you structure it correctly. The question is whether your husband will challenge it later. He won't have grounds to. I'm the sole inventor on every patent. And Chen Industries' operating agreement, which I wrote, allows me to reorganize intellectual property as I see fit for tax and liability purposes." Judith flipped through the operating agreement I'd brought, her eyes scanning the relevant clauses. "You wrote this yourself?" I was young and optimistic. I wanted to maintain control while still making my husband feel included. Lucky for you, past Mira was smarter than she realized. Judith set down the document. This clause here, the chief, technical officer shall have sole authority to organize, transfer, or restructure any intellectual property developed by or through the company for purposes of tax optimization, liability protection, or strategic reorganization. That's your golden ticket. I'm the CTO. You're the CTO, and you developed every one of these patents. Legally, you can absolutely transfer them to a new entity. I'd recommend we structure Chen Holdings as an S-Corp in Delaware, with you as the sole shareholder. Delaware has excellent privacy protections and business-friendly courts. If your husband tries to challenge the transfer later, he'll be fighting uphill. What about community property laws? We live in New York. New York isn't a community property state. It's equitable distribution. And even if it were, intellectual property created by one spouse using their own knowledge and skills is generally considered separate property, especially if there's a prenup or operating agreement that establishes it as such. She paused. You don't have a prenup, do you? No, I admitted. I refused to sign one. I was in love. Pity, but we can work with this. The key is making sure all the transfers happen before any divorce proceedings begin. Once you file for divorce, everything gets frozen. But right now, you're just optimizing your corporate structure, completely normal business activity. Over the next week, Judith filed all the necessary paperwork. Chen Holdings LLC was born on April 15, 2019, tax day, which seemed fitting. I was the sole member, the sole manager, the sole shareholder. The patents were transferred from Chen Industries to Chen Holdings through a carefully worded licensing agreement that made it look like Chen Industries still had access to the technology. They didn't. Not really. While ownership transferred to the new entity, the transfer was legal, documented, filed with the USPTO and the appropriate state agencies, and completely invisible to anyone who wasn't looking for it. Derek certainly wasn't looking. He was too busy with Vanessa, too convinced that I was the same trusting wife I'd always been, but the patents were just the beginning. Chen Industries had 12 subsidiary companies, each one a separate legal entity with its own operating agreement, its own bank accounts, its own P&L statement. I'd structured it that way deliberately, years ago, to protect our intellectual property and minimize tax liability. Each subsidiary focused on a different aspect of the business. Chen Water Solutions, industrial filtration systems for manufacturing plants and factories. Annual revenue, $127 million. Chen Clean, residential water filtration, the undersink systems and whole house filters sold in Home Depot and Lowe's. Annual revenue, $89 million. Chen Global, our disaster relief and international development division, the one I was most proud of. Annual revenue, $43 million, but priceless in terms of impact. Chen Tech, our R&D lab, where we developed new filtration technologies. No revenue, just overhead, but essential to everything else we did. Chen Municipal, government contracts for city water systems. Annual revenue, $156 million. Chen Marine, water filtration for ships and offshore platforms. Annual revenue, $71 million, and 6 others, each generating between $15 and $45 million annually. Together, these subsidiaries generated $634 million of our annual $712 million in revenue. The remaining $78 million came from Chen Industries itself, licensing fees, management fees, and overhead allocations. Derek thought subsidiary meant small and unimportant. Some minor side businesses that didn't matter much. He'd say things like, "How are the little companies doing?" in board meetings, and I'd give him a summary while internally screaming. What he didn't realize? Those little companies were the entire business. Chen Industries was just the holding company, the umbrella. Without the subsidiaries, it was nothing. I spent my days at the office, working late, the way I always had. Derek never questioned it. He assumed I was being my usual workaholic self, and it gave him more time with Vanessa. But instead of designing new filtration systems, I was designing the perfect corporate restructuring. One by one, I transferred the subsidiaries out of Chen Industries' control. It was shockingly easy. I'd set them up, so I controlled the operating agreements. Each subsidiary had the same basic structure. Chen Industries owned 100% of the membership interests, and I was listed as the managing member with full authority to amend the operating agreement. I amended them, added Chen Holdings as a member with 98% ownership interest, reduced Chen Industries to 2% ownership, changed the management structure so that Chen Holdings had full control. For example, Chen Water Solutions. On April 22nd, I filed an amended operating agreement in the state of Delaware, where the subsidiary was registered. The amendment added Chen Holdings as a member, issued new membership interests, and diluted Chen Industries' stake from 100% to 2%. The amendment was signed by me as managing member and authorized under the original operating agreement's restructuring clause. Legal, documented, filed with the appropriate state agency, invisible to anyone not looking at state corporate records. I did the same with Chen Clean on April 29th, Chen Global on May 6th, Chen Tech on May 13th. One by one, methodically, I stripped the profitable assets out of Chen Industries and moved them to Chen Holdings. My Manhattan lawyer filed the paperwork in different states: Delaware, Nevada, Wyoming, jurisdictions with strong privacy protections and business-friendly courts. Each transfer was legal, documented, and completely opaque to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. Derek certainly didn't know where to look. He couldn't even understand the Chen Industries P&L statement without help. He had no idea we had subsidiaries in multiple states, operating under different names with separate corporate structures. "How was work?" he'd ask over dinner on the rare occasions he came home. "Busy," I'd say, pushing my food around my plate. "But good. We're restructuring some of our subsidiary operations for tax efficiency." "That's great, babe," he'd say, already pulling out his phone to text Vanessa. "You're so smart with that stuff." He didn't care about the business unless it affected his lifestyle. As long as money kept flowing into our joint account, as long as he could buy Vanessa diamond bracelets and book them suites at the Four Seasons, he was content. I kept the money flowing. I paid myself a regular salary from Chen Industries, $450,000 a year, plus bonuses. I transferred the expected amounts to our joint account. I maintained the illusion of normalcy. Meanwhile, Chen Holdings was quietly accumulating hundreds of millions in assets. By June 1st, I'd transferred 11 of the 12 subsidiaries. Only Chen Municipal remained, and I was saving that one for last. It was our most visible subsidiary, the one that generated headlines when we won big government contracts. Moving it would require more finesse. The hardest part wasn't the legal maneuvering or the corporate restructuring. The hardest part was dealing with Vanessa. She still called me every day, still met me for lunch, still played the role of my best friend. And I had to sit across from her, smile, and pretend I didn't know. It was torture. We'd been friends since college, roommates our sophomore year at MIT. I'd been the nerdy engineering student, all late nights in the lab and anxiety about exams. She'd been the beautiful one, the social one, the one who knew how to talk to people and make them like her. We'd been an odd pair, but it worked. I helped her with her economics problem sets. She helped me navigate parties and dating. When I started Chen Industries, she was my first call. "I'm doing it," I'd told her, giddy with excitement and terror. "I'm really starting the company." "You're going to change the world," she'd said. And I'd believed she meant it. She introduced me to Derek at one of her work events. "He's perfect for you," she'd said. "Smart, ambitious, handsome, and he thinks you're amazing." In retrospect, I should have questioned why my best friend was setting me up with a man she described as perfect. But I was 27 and lonely and flattered that someone like Derek, charming, confident, from a wealthy family, was interested in someone like me. We dated for 6 months, got engaged after a year, married a year after that in a ceremony where Vanessa was my maid of honor and gave a speech about soulmates and true love. And then, sometime in the first year of our marriage, she'd started fucking my husband. I didn't know when it started. I'd never asked for details in my previous life. The knowledge that it had happened at all was enough to break me. But I'd seen enough in text messages and emails to know it had been going on for at least 3 years before the divorce. 3 years of lies and hotel rooms and business trips that weren't really business trips. 3 years of Vanessa calling me to chat while she was probably lying in bed with my husband. Now, in this second life, I had to sit across from her and pretend everything was fine. "You seem different," she said one afternoon in May, picking at a Cobb salad at some overpriced restaurant in Midtown. Happier? Do I? I smiled, taking a bite of my own salad. Maybe I'm just finally finding my balance. Work and life, you know. How are things with Derek? There it was, the fishing expedition. In my previous life, I'd broken down during this very lunch, confessing my fears that Derek was pulling away, that our marriage was in trouble. I feel like I'm losing him, I'd said, tears streaming down my face. He's so distant lately. Vanessa had comforted me, stroked my hair, and told me everything would be okay. Men go through phases, she'd said. He's probably just stressed about work. Give him space. Then she'd gone straight to Derek's bed and used my vulnerability against me. I found the texts later, in my previous life, when I was going through Derek's phone after he filed for divorce. Mira's getting unstable, she'd texted him. She's paranoid, emotional, crying at lunch about how you're distant. Maybe she's not fit to run the company. And Derek had replied, "You're right. I think we need to accelerate the timeline. The timeline for forcing me out, for stealing my company. Not this time." "We're great," I said brightly, spearing a piece of chicken. "Actually, I've been thinking about taking a step back from the day-to-day operations, letting Derek take more of a leadership role." Vanessa's eyes lit up like I just told her she'd won the lottery. "Really?" "I'm just so tired," I sighed, putting down my fork. "I've been running this company for 10 years. Maybe it's time I let Derek shine. He's been in the wings for so long and he's so capable. I think he could really take Chen Industries to the next level." I watched her process this, watched the calculations running behind her eyes. If I stepped back voluntarily, they wouldn't need to force me out. The timeline could accelerate. Derek could take over sooner. And once he was in control, it would be easier to marginalize me completely. She was probably already planning how to spin this to Derek, how to encourage him to move faster. "I think that's really mature of you," Vanessa said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Her engagement ring, from her ex-fiancé Matt, not Derek yet, glinted in the sunlight. She dumped Matt 2 months ago, citing growing apart. I wondered if Derek knew he was next in line, or if he thought he was special. Derek is so talented. He deserves a chance to lead. I squeezed back, matching her fake warmth with my own. "You're such a good friend, Vanessa. I don't know what I'd do without you." "I'll always be here for you," she promised, her voice dripping with sincerity. Liar, liar, liar. I wanted to throw my water in her face. I wanted to stand up and tell everyone in the restaurant what she was. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled and changed the subject to her work, and she spent 20 minutes complaining about her boss at Aquapure, never realizing that she was giving me competitive intelligence I could use against her company. When lunch ended, she hugged me. "Love you, babe." "Love you too," I said, the words ashes in my mouth. I went back to my office and vomited in my private bathroom, then washed my face and got back to work. In June, I made my move. I announced to the board that I was transitioning Derek to CEO. The board meeting was held in our conference room on the 15th floor of the Chen Industries, building in Lower Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the harbor. I'd bought this building 5 years ago, when we'd outgrown our original office space in Brooklyn. It was a point of pride, owning our headquarters outright. Or it had been. Now it was just another asset that Derek thought he'd get half of in the divorce. The board consisted of 8 people. Myself, Derek, 3 outside directors I'd recruited, Patricia Wu, a former executive at GE, James Morrison, who'd founded and sold his own tech company, and Dr. Sarah Kim, an environmental scientist, and 3 representatives from our major investors. We'd taken on outside capital in 2015 to fund our international expansion. "I've called this meeting to discuss a transition in leadership," I began, standing at the head of the table. As many of you know, I've been CEO of Chen Industries since its founding 10 years ago. It's been the privilege of my life to build this company, to create technology that makes a real difference in the world. I paused, letting the emotion show in my voice. This part needed to seem genuine. "But I'm tired. I've been running at full speed for a decade, and I'm starting to feel the strain. I'm not performing at my best, and the company deserves better." I looked at Derek, who was sitting up straighter, trying not to smile. "Fortunately, we have someone perfectly positioned to take over. Derek has been our COO for 7 years. He knows this company inside and out, and I believe he's ready to lead us into our next phase of growth." Patricia Wu frowned. "Mira, are you sure about this? You built this company. You are Chen Industries." "I'll still be here," I assured her. "I'm not leaving. I'll transition to chairman of the board and chief technical officer. I want to focus on innovation, on developing the next generation of filtration technology. But Derek will handle day-to-day operations, strategic planning, and leadership of the management team." James Morrison leaned forward. "Derek, how do you feel about this?" Derek had prepared a speech. I'd heard him practicing it in the shower. "I'm honored," he said, his voice steady. "Mira has built something incredible, and I don't take lightly the responsibility of stewarding her legacy. I've learned from the best, and I'm ready to take Chen Industries to new heights. We have opportunities in Asia that we haven't fully explored. We have potential efficiencies in our operations that could improve our margins. And we have a brand that's respected worldwide. I'm excited to build on that foundation." It was a good speech. Confident without being arrogant, respectful of me without being obsequious. Derek could be very charming when he wanted to be. The board discussed it for an hour. Patricia was skeptical. She'd seen me build this company from nothing and was worried I was making a mistake. But the investor representatives were supportive. They saw Derek as a professional manager who could scale the operations, whatever that meant. Dr. Kim abstained, saying it was an internal matter. In the end, they voted to approve the transition. 7 in favor, 1 abstention. Derek would become CEO on July 1st, 2019. "Congratulations, Derek," I said, shaking his hand across the table. "I know you'll do great things." He pulled me into a hug, which surprised me. "Thank you, Mira. I won't let you down." He already had, of course. He'd been letting me down for 3 years. But he didn't know I knew that. After the meeting, Derek called Vanessa. I heard him through his office door, which he hadn't quite closed. "It worked. I'm CEO. Can you believe it? She just gave it to me." Vanessa's voice was tinny through the phone, but I could make out her words. "I knew she would. She's so weak. She wants to be liked so badly, she'll give away anything." "July 1st, Derek said. "I'll officially be CEO. Then we can start phase 2. Phase 2, forcing me out completely. I went back to my office, closed the door, and smiled. They thought I was weak. They thought I was giving up. They had no idea what I'd been doing for the past 3 months. What Derek didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know because he'd never actually bothered to understand our business, was that Chen Industries no longer controlled the products that generated revenue. The subsidiaries I'd transferred to Chen Holdings, they held all the actual business. The manufacturing facilities, the customer contracts, the distribution agreements, the supply chain relationships. Chen Industries had become a holding company in name only, with no actual operations. But the P&L statement still looked good, for now, because the subsidiaries were still reporting their revenue up to Chen Industries through transfer pricing arrangements. On paper, it looked like Chen Industries was generating $700+ million in annual revenue. In reality, Chen Holdings owned the subsidiaries that generated that revenue. Chen Industries was just getting paid management fees and licensing fees that I could adjust or eliminate at any time. It was like a building where the foundation had been hollowed out, but the facade still looked solid. One strong wind and the whole thing would collapse. But Derek didn't know that, because Derek had never looked at the underlying corporate structure. He thought Chen Industries and the business were the same thing. On July 1st, Derek officially became CEO. There was a small ceremony in the office. Cake, champagne, speeches. I gave a toast about new beginnings and exciting futures. Derek gave a speech about his vision for the company, buzzwords about synergies and disruption and blue ocean strategy. The staff clapped politely. Some of them looked worried, but most seemed happy for Derek. I'd told my key lieutenants, the VPs who actually ran the different divisions, that this was a temporary transition, that I was testing Derek's capabilities before making any permanent decisions. They understood. They'd been with me long enough to know that I didn't make impulsive decisions, that there was always a method to my madness. What they didn't know was that in 6 months, most of them would be working for Chen Holdings instead of Chen Industries. But I'd get to that later. Derek moved into the CEO's office. the big corner office with the harbor view that I'd occupied for 8 years. I moved to a smaller office down the hall, nominally the chairman's office, but really just a place to keep up appearances. I spent most of my time at Chen Holdings' offices anyway. I'd leased space for Chen Holdings in the Flatiron District, a beautiful pre-war building with exposed brick and high ceilings. Just 3,000 square feet to start, enough for me, an assistant, and a small finance team. I hired people I'd known from previous jobs, people I trusted, people who didn't know Derek and couldn't be compromised. My assistant, Rachel, was a Gaussy, Harvard MBA who'd worked at Goldman before deciding she wanted to do something more meaningful. She was brilliant with numbers, ruthlessly organized, and discreet. When I explained what I was building, a new corporate structure to protect my intellectual property, she nodded and got to work without asking uncomfortable questions. My CFO, James, different James from the board, was a former Big Four accountant who specialized in corporate restructuring. He'd helped me set up the subsidiary transfers, creating a paper trail that was completely legal and completely opaque. "This is elegant," he'd said, reviewing my corporate structure diagrams. "Complex enough that a casual observer won't understand it, but simple enough that it will hold up under scrutiny, as long as everything is properly documented." "It is," I'd assured him. And it was. Every transfer had been authorized under the appropriate operating agreements. Every amendment had been filed with the correct state, agencies. Every dollar that moved from one entity to another had been properly recorded and could be traced through bank statements and wire transfer confirmations. It was all legal. That was the beauty of it. Derek could challenge it later, after the divorce, but he'd be fighting an uphill battle. He'd have to prove that I'd breached my fiduciary duty to Chen Industries by transferring assets out of the company. But I hadn't breached anything. I'd reorganized our corporate structure using the authority explicitly granted to me in the operating agreements. I'd acted within my rights as CTO and majority owner. And even if he could prove a breach, the remedies would be complicated. The subsidiaries were now owned by Chen Holdings, a separate entity with its own shareholders, me, and its own rights. He couldn't just snap his fingers and get them back. By the time Derek's lawyers figured out what had happened, it would be too late. July brought the first warning signs if Derek had been smart enough to notice them. Our quarterly revenue report for Q2 2019 showed a slight decline, 5% compared to Q2 2018. Not dramatic, nothing that would set off immediate alarms. I attributed it to market fluctuations, increased competition from Aquapure and other players. Derek accepted this explanation without question. He was too busy enjoying being CEO to worry about a small revenue dip. In reality, I'd started redirecting new contracts to Chen Holdings subsidiaries. For example, the city of Phoenix issued an RFP for a new municipal water filtration system in June. The contract was worth $23 million over 3 years. In my previous life, Chen Industries had won the bid and deployed the system through Chen Municipal. This time, Chen Municipal, now owned by Chen Holdings, bid on the contract directly instead of going through Chen Industries. Same company name, same team, same technology. Phoenix didn't care about the corporate ownership structure. They just wanted the best filtration system at the best price. Chen Municipal won the bid. The $23 million contract went to Chen Holdings, not Chen Industries. Derek never knew the bid had happened. He wasn't involved in the day-to-day operations of Chen Municipal. He didn't know which contracts we were bidding on or who our clients were. He just looked at quarterly revenue numbers and assumed everything was fine. I did this with a dozen smaller contracts over the summer, redirecting new business to Chen Holdings while maintaining Chen Industries' existing contracts until they expired. Money flowed into Chen Holdings. Chen Industries' revenue slowly declined, but it was subtle enough that Derek didn't panic. "We're down a bit," he said in the August board meeting, "but nothing to worry about, just normal market fluctuations." Patricia Wu wasn't convinced. "Derek, I'm seeing a pattern. We were down 5% in Q2. Now we're down 7% in July compared to last July. That's not market fluctuations. That's a trend." "We'll recover," Derek assured her. "I'm implementing new efficiency measures that will improve our margins." "What efficiency measures?" Derek pulled out a PowerPoint he'd obviously thrown together that morning. Bullets about streamlining operations and leveraging synergies and other business school nonsense that didn't mean anything. Patricia looked at me. "Mira, what do you think?" I shrugged. Derek's the CEO. If he thinks these measures will help, I'm willing to let him try. Derek shot me a grateful look. He thought I was supporting him. Really, I just wanted him to dig himself deeper. In August, Derek started hiring consultants. He brought in a firm called Stratcore, one of those expensive consulting companies that charges $500 an hour to tell you things you already know. 3 consultants set up shop in our conference room, interviewed our staff, and spent 6 weeks producing a 200-page report. The report recommended operational efficiencies, which translated to layoffs. Derek decided to cut 30 positions from our operations staff: engineers, technicians, project managers, good people who'd been with us for years. It's necessary, Derek told me when I objected. We need to cut costs. These people are the backbone of our operations, I argued. They're the ones who actually deliver the filtration systems, who manage the installations, who maintain client relationships. And they'll continue to do that. We're just doing it with fewer people, working smarter, not harder. It was corporate speak for, I don't actually understand what these people do, so I'm assuming they're not important. The layoffs happened in September. I met with each person individually, apologized, and gave them generous severance packages, more generous than Derek had authorized, paid out of my own pocket through Chen Holdings. I also told them all the same thing. This isn't personal. And if you're interested in new opportunities, send me your resume. I'm always looking for talented people. All 30 sent me their resumes within a week. I hired 28 of them to work for Chen Holdings subsidiaries at 20% higher salaries. They do the same work they'd been doing: installing filtration systems, managing projects, maintaining client relationships, just under a different corporate umbrella. Derek never knew, because Derek didn't pay attention to who actually did the work. The layoffs didn't help Chen Industries' revenue. By October, we were down 23% year over year. The board started asking hard questions. The October board meeting was tense. Revenue is down 23%, Patricia said, her voice tight with frustration. Operating expenses are actually up because of these consultant fees. Our margins are collapsing. Derek, what's going on? Derek had prepared for this. He had another PowerPoint, this one with more charts and graphs and forward-looking projections that showed everything getting better in Q4. It's a transition period, he explained. When you make major operational changes, there's always short-term pain, but we're positioning ourselves for long-term growth. What long-term growth? Patricia demanded. I'm not seeing any new contracts in the pipeline. Our existing contracts are winding down. Where are the new clients? Derek floundered. Because there were no new clients. Not for Chen Industries anyway. I could have jumped in. Could have explained that Chen Municipal had just signed a $45 million contract with the city of Denver, that Chen Clean had landed a major distribution deal with a national hardware chain, that Chen Global had won a USAID contract for water infrastructure in Haiti. But those contracts belong to Chen Holdings now, not Chen Industries. And Derek didn't know that. We're working on several opportunities, Derek said vaguely. I can't share details yet because of confidentiality agreements, but we have strong prospects. It was a lie. He had no prospects. He'd been spending his time in his office, taking long lunches with Vanessa, and going to industry conferences where he networked, but never actually generated new business. I'm very concerned, said Michael Torres, one of our investor representatives. We invested in Chen Industries because of its strong growth trajectory and innovative technology. What I'm seeing now is a company in decline with no clear turnaround strategy. I waited, let Derek sweat. Finally, one of the other board members looked at me. Mira, you've been quiet. What's your assessment? I sighed, as if reluctant to criticize Derek publicly. I'm worried too. When I stepped back, I'd hoped Derek would bring new energy and fresh ideas to the CEO role. But what I'm seeing is concerning. Revenue is declining, we've lost key personnel, and I'm not seeing the strategic vision I'd hoped for. Derek's face went red. Mira, I'm not saying you're incapable, Derek. I'm saying maybe this transition happened too quickly. Maybe you need more time to develop your leadership skills before taking on the CEO role. More time? He looked around the table, desperate. I've been CEO for 4 months. You can't judge my performance after 4 months. We can when the company is bleeding revenue, Patricia said. I move that we extend Derek's probationary period to 6 months and review his performance again in December. If we don't see significant improvement, we'll need to consider alternative leadership. The motion passed. Derek stayed on as CEO, but on notice. That night, he came home drunk for the first time in our marriage. He stumbled through the door at 11 p.m., tie askew, shirt untucked. I was in the living room, reading a book I wasn't actually absorbing, waiting. "They want to replace me," he slurred, dropping onto the couch beside me. "The board. Your friend Patricia, she called me incompetent." "Derek, and you just sat there. You didn't defend me, your own husband." "I told the truth," I said quietly. "The revenue numbers don't lie." "It's not my fault. The market is tough right now. Our competitors are undercutting us on price. What am I supposed to do?" "I don't know, Derek. You're the CEO. What are you going to do?" He didn't have an answer. He just sat there, drunk and defeated. And for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then he pulled out his phone and started texting Vanessa right in front of me, too drunk to be discreet. "I need you," he typed. "This is all falling apart." Her response came immediately. "Come over. I'll make you feel better." He stood up, swaying slightly. "I'm going out." "Where?" "For a drive. I need to clear my head." He left, went straight to Vanessa's apartment, where she probably commiserated with him and told him it was all my fault, that I was sabotaging him, that I'd never really loved him. I sat in our empty house and thought about the woman I used to be, the one who would have cried herself to sleep over this, the one who would have blamed herself, who would have tried harder to be a better wife. That woman was dead. I'd killed her when I woke up in this second life. November was when everything accelerated. I'd been patient for 8 months, slowly dismantling Chen Industries while maintaining the facade of a functioning company. But I was running out of time. In my previous life, Derek had served divorce papers in March 2020. I needed to be ready. I accelerated my timeline. On November 1st, I transferred Chen Municipal, the last remaining profitable subsidiary, to Chen Holdings. It was the biggest and most visible subsidiary, the one that generated headlines when we won major government contracts. Moving it would be noticed. I did it anyway. Chen Municipal had been structured as a Delaware LLC, with Chen Industries as the 100% owner. I amended the operating agreement, adding Chen Holdings as a member with 98% ownership and reducing Chen Industries to 2%. Same process I'd used with the other subsidiaries. Then I did something I'd been planning for months. I resigned from Chen Industries. Not as chairman, I kept that title, but I resigned as chief technical officer, the position that had given me my authority over the intellectual property and corporate structure. "I need to focus on innovation," I told the board in an email. "I'm stepping away from my day-to-day role at Chen Industries to pursue new research opportunities. I'll remain as chairman and will be available for strategic guidance, but I'm resigning as CTO effective immediately." The board was surprised, but not alarmed. They thought I was just taking a step back to work on new inventions. Maybe enjoy life a little. Derek was thrilled. My resignation as CTO meant he had more control. Fewer people questioning his decisions. What neither he nor the board realized. I was severing my official ties to Chen Industries so that when it collapsed, I wouldn't be blamed. On November 15th, I had my lawyer, Judith Chen from Manhattan, send Derek a letter. It was a simple letter, very professional. It notified him that Chen Holdings LLC, a separate corporate entity, now owned controlling interests in the various Chen Industries subsidiaries. It explained that this restructuring had been done for tax optimization and liability protection purposes, as authorized under the operating agreements. It assured him that Chen Industries would continue to receive management fees and licensing fees from the subsidiaries. It included copies of all the filed paperwork, the amended operating agreements, the state registrations, everything legal and above board. Derek called me 3 hours after receiving the letter. "What the fuck is this?" he shouted into the phone. "Chen Holdings, you transferred our subsidiaries out of the company?" "I reorganized our corporate structure," I said calmly. "It's something I've been doing for months. Didn't you notice the operating agreement amendments in the board packages?" What? No, I didn't. "Mira, you can't just transfer company assets." "I can, actually. As CTO, I had the authority to restructure intellectual property and related entities. It's in the operating agreements you signed when the subsidiaries were created. But, Derek, this is a completely normal corporate action. We're protecting our assets from liability, optimizing our tax structure, and creating flexibility for future growth. Any competent CEO would have done the same thing. But you didn't tell me. I sent you the amended operating agreements. You approved them in board meetings. This isn't a secret, Derek. It's just complex corporate structure that requires some understanding of entity law. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. Who helped you with this? He asked. I have lawyers. Good lawyers. I'm calling our lawyers. Feel free. Everything I did was legal and properly documented. But Derek, I should warn you. If you try to challenge this restructuring, you'll be challenging your own decision-making as CEO. You approved these operating agreement amendments. You signed off on the restructuring. If there's a problem, it's a problem you created. He hung up on me. 20 minutes later, he called back. I want a divorce. Okay, I said. Okay, that's it? Just okay? Derek, we haven't been happy for a long time. If you want a divorce, I'm not going to fight you. Let's just do it civilly and move on with our lives. He was silent for a moment, thrown by my cooperation. I'll have my lawyer draw up papers, he finally said. Sounds good. I'll have my lawyer review them. I want half of everything, Mira. You're not going to fuck me over with this Chen Holdings bullshit. We'll discuss property division with the lawyers, but, Derek, Chen Holdings isn't marital property. It's a separate entity that I created using my separate intellectual property. Your lawyers will confirm that. We'll see about that. He hung up again. I sat in my office at Chen Holdings, my beautiful sun-filled office in the Flatiron Building, and smiled. Finally, it was finally happening. Derek filed for divorce on November 22nd, right before Thanksgiving. The papers arrived via courier. I read them over coffee at my penthouse, my gorgeous penthouse with its view of Central Park that Derek didn't know existed. He wanted half of everything, the house in Westchester, the investment accounts, Chen Industries, and this made me laugh. He wanted half of Chen Holdings, claiming it was a marital asset derived from Chen Industries. His lawyer was an expensive divorce attorney from a white shoe firm, someone named Richard Kessler, who had a reputation for aggressive tactics and favorable settlements for his clients. I called, Judith Chen? He's demanding half of Chen Holdings, I told her. Of course he is. He's not stupid, just ignorant. His lawyer has probably figured out that the real assets are in Chen Holdings, not Chen Industries. Can he get it? Absolutely not. Chen Holdings is your separate property. You created it using intellectual property you developed before and during the marriage, intellectual property that belongs to you personally. The operating agreements clearly establish you as the sole owner. And she paused dramatically. You have a prenup? I don't have a prenup. You do now. She explained what she'd done, and I loved her for it. She'd found the draft prenuptial agreement my father's lawyer had prepared 10 years ago before Derek and I got married. My father had insisted on a prenup, wanted to protect my nascent business from a potential gold digger. I'd refused to make Derek sign it, had tearfully told my father that love meant trust, that I wouldn't start my marriage with legal protections against my own husband. My father had been disappointed, but respected my decision. The draft prenup had been filed away in his lawyer's records. Judith had obtained that draft, legally, through my father's lawyer. She'd had it notarized with the correct date from 2009, using a notary who'd since retired and conveniently didn't keep detailed records from 13 years ago. She'd created a paper trail suggesting that I had signed it after all, that it had been filed in our safety deposit box, that Derek had just forgotten about it in the excitement of the wedding. Was it fraud? Technically, yes. Would anyone be able to prove it? No. The prenup clearly states that any business entities founded by you prior to the marriage or created using intellectual property you developed remain your separate property in the event of divorce, Judith explained. Chen Industries was founded before your marriage. Chen Holdings was created using patents you invented. Both are your separate property. What about Chen Industries itself? I asked. He wants half. He can have half, it's worthless. That was the beautiful part. Chen Industries, stripped of all its profitable subsidiaries, was now just a shell company with declining revenue and increasing expenses. The Q3 earnings report had shown a devastating loss, $12 million in the red, largely due to Derek's consultant fees and mismanagement. The company that had once been worth $847 million was now worth maybe $180 million and dropping fast. "Let him fight for his half of Chen Industries," Judith said. "While he's focused on that, he won't notice what you're doing with Chen Holdings." December was a blur of mediation sessions and legal posturing. Derek's lawyer demanded financial records. We provided them for Chen Industries, detailed, accurate records showing a company in decline, revenue down 40% year over year, operating losses mounting, key contracts expiring without replacements, consultants bleeding money, employee morale collapsing. "What happened?" Derek demanded during our first mediation session. We sat across from each other at a polished conference table, lawyers flanking us like seconds in a duel. "The company was worth $847 million last year. How did it drop to $180 million? Mismanagement," I said calmly, my voice level. "Poor leadership decisions, market conditions, the things that happened while you were CEO." His face turned red. "You sabotaged me. You deliberately tanked the company." "I wasn't even CEO, Derek. You were. You made the decisions, you hired the consultants, you fired 30 key employees, you approved all the strategic initiatives. If the company failed, it failed under your leadership." Richard Kessler, Derek's lawyer, jumped in. "Ms. Liu, my client believes you deliberately structured the company to fail, that you transferred profitable assets out of Chen Industries to harm his financial interest in the divorce." "Your client is wrong," Judith responded. "Ms. Liu restructured Chen Industries for legitimate business purposes, tax optimization, and liability protection. Those restructurings happened months before any divorce proceedings began, when Ms. Liu was still trying to make the marriage work. The fact that Chen Industries subsequently declined is due to your client's poor performance as CEO." "We'd like to see financial records for Chen Holdings," Kessler said. "Chen Holdings is not marital property and is therefore not subject to discovery in this divorce proceeding." "How do you figure that?" Judith slid the prenup across the table. "This prenuptial agreement, signed by both parties in November 2009 before the marriage, clearly establishes that any business entities founded by Ms. Liu using her intellectual property remain her separate property." Kessler picked up the document, studied it. Derek grabbed it from his hands. "I don't remember signing this," Derek said, his voice tight. I shrugged. "It was 13 years ago, Derek. We signed a lot of papers back then. Marriage license, prenup, venue contract, vendor agreements. I'm sure you don't remember all of them." "There's no way I would have agreed to this. And yet, there's your signature, notarized, dated November 3rd, 2009, 7 days before our wedding." Derek stared at the signature. His signature, which I'd forged in a moment of what I considered justified criminal activity. It was nearly perfect. I'd practiced for hours, studying old documents he'd signed, matching the pressure and flow of his handwriting. Kessler studied the document looking for flaws. He wouldn't find any. Judith had been very careful. The paper was the right age, slightly yellowed. The notary stamp was legitimate, from a notary who'd actually been practicing in New York in Tenzin. The filing number matched the sequential system that notary had used. "We'll want to verify this." "Document's authenticity," Kessler finally said. "Be my guest," Judith responded. "But I should warn you, challenging the validity of a prenup is an uphill battle. The burden of proof is on you to show fraud or duress. And good luck proving either when the document is 13 years old and properly executed." The mediation session ended with no agreement. Derek stormed out, Vanessa trailing after him. I caught a glimpse of her in the hallway. She looked less triumphant than she had at our previous meeting. Maybe reality was setting in. Maybe she was starting to realize that Derek wasn't the golden ticket she'd thought. The next mediation session was 2 weeks later, right before Christmas. Derek had hired a forensic accountant to go through Chen Industries' financial records. The accountant had produced a report showing that revenue had been systematically redirected away from Chen Industries to other entities over the past 8 months. "This is evidence of sabotage," Kessler declared, waving the report. "Ms. Liu deliberately diverted business away from Chen Industries to harm its value." Ms. Liu diverted business to Chen Holdings, an entity she owns separately, Judith countered. She has every right to direct her business opportunities to her own companies. Chen Industries doesn't have exclusive rights to the filtration market. But the subsidiaries that won those contracts were Chen Industries' subsidiaries. Were past tense. They're now Chen Holdings subsidiaries. The restructuring was legal and properly executed. If your client had been paying attention to the operating agreement amendments he approved as CEO, he would have known this was happening. Kessler turned to me. Ms. Liu, did you or did you not deliberately restructure Chen Industries to minimize its value before filing for divorce? I restructured Chen Industries for legitimate business reasons, I said, meeting his eyes. Tax optimization, liability protection, and strategic flexibility. The fact that this restructuring happened to occur before my husband filed for divorce is coincidental. I had no way of knowing he was planning to file. He never mentioned divorce until November. It was technically true. He'd filed for divorce. I'd just been planning for it since March. The timing is awfully convenient, Kessler said. Life is full of coincidences, Mr. Kessler. We went back and forth for 2 hours, getting nowhere. Derek wanted half of Chen Holdings. I refused. He threatened to sue. I told him to go ahead. Finally, the mediator, a patient woman named Susan Feldman who specialized in high-net-worth divorces, held up her hands. Let's take a step back, she said. We're not going to resolve the Chen Holdings question today. Let's focus on what we can agree on. The house in Westchester. Can we agree that's a marital asset to be sold and split? Yes, I said. Fine. Derek agreed. Personal investment accounts established during the marriage. Split them, I said. I don't care. There's maybe $2 million total. Take half. Derek's eyes widened. In our previous life, I'd fought over every dollar in those accounts. This time I was giving them away freely. It made him suspicious. What about retirement accounts? Susan asked. Split those too, I said. 401ks, IRAs, all of it. 50-50. Okay, Susan made notes. What about Chen Industries? I'll agree to a 50-50 split of Chen Industries, I said. Derek and his lawyer exchanged glances. They'd expected me to fight for the company. Just like that? Kessler asked. Just like that. Derek can have half the company. He was CEO after all. He should share in the success or failure of his leadership. It was a trap, and they didn't see it. We accept, Kessler said quickly before I could change my mind. Excellent, Susan said, looking relieved to have found some common ground. So, we have agreement on the house, the investment accounts, the retirement accounts, and Chen Industries. The remaining dispute is over Chen Holdings. Which is not marital property, Judith interjected. We're willing to let Mr. Chen pursue litigation on that question if he wants to, but Ms. Liu is not negotiating over it in mediation. Then I guess we're going to litigation, Kessler said. Fine with me, I said. We scheduled a court date for February. I didn't tell them that Chen Industries would be worthless by February, that the Q4 earnings report would show losses of over $20 million, dropping the valuation to less than $150 million. That by the time we got to court, Derek's half of the company would be worth less than his legal fees. I spent Christmas at my penthouse. It was my first Christmas alone in 13 years. Derek and I had always spent the holiday together, fighting over whose family to visit, decorating the tree while he complained that I was too particular about ornament placement, cooking a dinner that he'd barely eat because he was texting Vanessa. This Christmas, I decorated my penthouse exactly how I wanted. A modern tree with white lights and gold ornaments. Minimalist, elegant, perfect. I cooked myself a beautiful dinner. Duck confit, roasted vegetables, a bottle of wine that cost more than my first car. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, watching the snow fall over Central Park. No fighting, no lying, no pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Just peace. My phone rang around 9 p.m., Derek. I considered not answering, but curiosity won out. Mira, he said. He sounded drunk. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Derek. I wanted to say, this is fucking awful. Christmas alone, fighting over money, lawyers, I hate it. Then why did you file for divorce? Silence. You were so cold, he finally said. So distant. After you stepped back from the CEO role, it was like you didn't care anymore about me, about us, about anything. I almost laughed. He'd been cheating on me for 3 years, and he was complaining that I was distant. Derek, I needed this divorce settled. It's been a difficult year, but I've made a decision. I'm willing to accept the 50-50 split we discussed. Really? His relief was palpable. Really, I just want to move on with my life. Thank you, he breathed. God, thank you. I'll tell my lawyer tomorrow. Actually, let's wait until after the new year. Let's spend the holidays not thinking about divorce for once. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. We hung up. I smiled to myself, swirling my wine. The reason I wanted to wait until after New Year's was simple. On January 2nd, Chen Industries would release its Q4 earnings. And on January 5th, 3 major clients would announce they were switching to Chen Water Solutions, a Chen Holdings subsidiary for all future filtration needs. The valuation of Chen Industries would plummet, and Derek was about to agree to take half of it. The new year came with more snow and a sense of inevitability. On January 2nd, Chen Industries released its Q4 earnings. Revenue down 48% year over year, operating loss of $23 million, negative cash flow, debt mounting. The board called an emergency meeting. Derek looked haggard when he walked into the conference room. He'd lost weight, dark circles under his eyes. Being CEO of a failing company while going through a divorce was taking its toll. This is unsustainable, Patricia said, her voice hard. We've given you time, Derek. It's been 6 months. The company is worse now than when you took over. The market is fine. Our competitors are thriving. Aquapure posted record profits last quarter. This isn't market conditions. This is leadership failure. Derek looked at me. Mira, please, help me. You know this company better than anyone. Tell them how to fix it. I could have helped him. Could have explained that the company couldn't be fixed, not in its current state, because all the profitable assets were gone. Could have told the board that Chen Industries was a hollow shell, and the only solution was to dissolve it or sell it for parts. Instead, I said, I'm sorry, Derek, I'm just the chairman. You're the CEO. This is your company to run. But I think we need to vote on Derek's continued employment, Patricia interrupted. All in favor of removing Derek Chen as CEO? 7 hands went up. Only Derek abstained. Derek, you're fired, Patricia said. Security will escort you out. Your access to company systems will be terminated immediately. You'll receive 2 weeks severance as per your employment contract. Derek's face went white. You can't. I'm on the board. I'm a shareholder. You're removed as CEO. You can remain on the board if you want, though I'd suggest resigning to avoid the embarrassment of watching this company fail. And your shares are worth whatever someone's willing to pay for them, which at current valuation is very little. Derek looked around the table, desperate. No one would meet his eyes. Mira, he said, one last plea. I'm sorry, Derek, I really am. He stood and walked out. Security followed him to his office, watched him pack his personal items into a box, and escorted him from the building. I stayed for the rest of the board meeting. We discussed options for Chen Industries, bankruptcy, sale, dissolution. Nothing looked good. What about you, Mira? James Morrison asked. Would you be willing to come back as CEO, try to save the company? No, I said. I've moved on. I'm pursuing other opportunities. What opportunities? I founded a new company, Chen Holdings. We focus on water filtration technology similar to Chen Industries, but with a more streamlined structure. Wait, Patricia said. You founded a competing company while you were chairman of Chen Industries? Chen Holdings isn't a competitor. It operates in the same industry, but there's no conflict of interest. I resigned as CTO months ago. I've fulfilled all my obligations to Chen Industries. It was technically true. Morally questionable, but technically true. Jesus, Mira, Patricia said. You really planned this, didn't you? The restructuring, the subsidiary transfers, the timing of everything. I protected my intellectual property, I said calmly. That's all. We stared at each other across the table. You're ruthless, she finally said. It didn't sound like a compliment, but it wasn't exactly a criticism either. Just an observation. I'm practical, I corrected. I built this company from nothing. I wasn't going to let it be stolen from me. Does Derek know about Chen Holdings having all the profitable subsidiaries? His lawyers do. Whether he understands it is another question. Patricia laughed, short and sharp. He's going to lose his mind when he figures it out. Probably. Derek figured it out 3 days later. He called me at 2 a.m, screaming, "You fucking bitch! You stole my company! You fucking stole everything!" I put him on speakerphone, my voice calm. "I didn't steal anything, Derek. I reorganized corporate structure, using authority granted to me in the operating agreements. Everything I did was legal." Legal? Legal? You bankrupted Chen Industries. You transferred all the profitable parts out and left me with an empty shell. I transferred intellectual property that belongs to me. The fact that Chen Industries relied on that intellectual property isn't my problem. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue you for everything you have. Go ahead. My lawyers will bury you in motions and discovery. And even if you win, which you won't, the most you can claim is a breach of fiduciary duty with damages equal to what Chen Industries lost, which is nothing, because Chen Industries never owned those subsidiaries. I did. He was breathing hard, almost hyperventilating. "Why?" he finally asked, his voice breaking. "Why did you do this?" And here it was, the moment I'd been waiting for. "Because you cheated on me, Derek. For 3 years, you fucked my best friend while I built an empire you took credit for. You planned to force me out of my own company and steal everything I'd worked for. You wanted me dead. You told me to let go while I was dying in that ambulance. Did you think I forgot? Did you think I would just accept that?" Silence. "How did you know?" he whispered. "About Vanessa? I've always known, Derek. I just waited for the right time to do something about it. In the previous life..." He stopped. "What?" "Nothing. Nothing." But I knew what he'd almost said. He'd almost admitted that he remembered too. That somehow, impossibly, he also remembered that other timeline where I died and he'd gotten everything. But that was impossible. I was the only one who'd come back, right? "Mira, please," Derek said, his anger deflating into desperation. "I'm begging you. The divorce settlement, can we renegotiate? I'll take 20% of Chen Industries, 10%, anything. I can't be left with nothing." "You won't have nothing. You'll have half of Chen Industries exactly as we agreed. 50-50 split. Fair is fair. Chen Industries is worthless. Then you'll have half of worthless. That's what you negotiated for." "But, Derek, we had an agreement. I'm holding up my end. I suggest you hold up yours." I hung up. He called back immediately. I sent him to voicemail. He called 17 more times that night. I turned off my phone and slept better than I had in years. We signed the final divorce papers on January 15th, exactly 1 year after my rebirth, back in that same mahogany-paneled office where this whole thing had started. But everything was different now. Derek looked broken. He'd aged 10 years in the past 2 months, gray in his hair that hadn't been there before, lines around his mouth from stress and anger. Vanessa wasn't with him this time. Apparently, she dumped him 3 weeks ago when it became clear he wasn't going to be a rich CEO after all. She'd moved on to a hedge fund manager named Brad, who actually had money. 50-50 split of Chen Industries, the lawyer confirmed. Currently valued at $147 million, based on the most recent assessment. The valuation had dropped another $33 million in the past month. 3 major clients had announced they were switching to Chen Holdings subsidiaries, and 2 more had let their contracts expire without renewal. Chen Industries was in a death spiral, but Derek was trapped. He'd agreed to the 50-50 split. He couldn't back out now. "And the house will be sold, profits split," the lawyer continued. "Ms. Liu retains her personal investment accounts established before the marriage. Mr. Chen retains his. No spousal support either direction." "Agreed," Derek said, his voice flat. I picked up that same 24-karat gold pen and signed my name on the divorce decree. Derek signed below me. "Congratulations," the mediator said. "You're divorced." I stood, smoothed my skirt, and extended my hand to Derek. "I wish you well." He looked at my hand like it might bite him, but eventually shook it. His grip was limp, defeated. "I hope you're happy," he said quietly. "I hope all this was worth it." It was. I assured him. Every moment. I walked out of that office for the last time, heels clicking on marble, head held high. I walked out with $73.5 million in Chen Industries stock I'd sell to a private equity firm 3 months later for $31 million, taking a loss because the company continued to decline. But I also walked out with $634 million in Chen Holdings assets that Derek knew nothing about when he agreed to the settlement. The patents, the subsidiaries, the international contracts, the customer relationships, the talented employees I'd poached, the penthouse in Manhattan, the reputation I'd built over 10 years. Everything that mattered. Derek got $73.5 million in rapidly depreciating Chen Industries stock, half of a house in Westchester that needed a new roof, and the knowledge that he'd been completely, utterly outmaneuvered by the wife he'd underestimated. The aftermath was sweeter than I'd imagined. Chen Industries declared bankruptcy 6 months later. The remaining assets were sold to pay off debt. Derek's shares became worthless. He tried to sue me for fraud, for breach of fiduciary duty, for anything he could think of. His lawyers filed motion after motion. My lawyers destroyed every single one. The courts agreed. I'd acted within my authority as CTO. The corporate restructuring was legal. The prenup was valid, or at least no one could prove it wasn't. Chen Holdings was my separate property. Derek's lawsuits were dismissed with prejudice, meaning he couldn't refile them. He was ordered to pay my legal fees, an additional $450,000 that he didn't have. He declared personal bankruptcy a year after our divorce. Last I heard, he was working as a business consultant for small startups, making $80,000 a year and living in a studio apartment in Queens. Vanessa had married her hedge fund manager and posted their wedding photos on Instagram, a lavish affair in St. Bart's that looked exactly like the wedding she'd planned to have with Derek. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Derek had tried to reach out to her, had sent her drunk texts begging for another chance. She'd blocked his number. As for me, I took Chen Holdings public 18 months after the divorce. The IPO was a massive success. The company was valued at $2.3 billion. My personal stake was worth $1.7 billion. Forbes ran a profile on me. Mira Liu, the water filtration genius who built a billion-dollar empire. The article detailed how I'd revolutionized clean water technology, how my disaster relief systems were saving lives around the world, how I'd built a company from a single patent and $50,000 loan. There was a single paragraph about my divorce. Liu was previously married to Derek Chen, who briefly served as CEO of her first company, Chen Industries. The marriage ended in 2020, and Liu has since focused entirely on building Chen Holdings into one of the most successful water technology companies in the world. They interviewed me for the article, asked if I had any regrets about the divorce. None, I said. It was the best decision I ever made. It freed me to become who I was always meant to be. The reporter, a young woman from Forbes' tech desk, leaned forward. There are rumors that you deliberately sabotaged Chen Industries before the divorce, that you transferred assets out of the company to prevent your ex-husband from getting them. I reorganized my corporate structure for legitimate business reasons, I said, the same line I'd given 100 times. Tax optimization, liability protection, strategic flexibility. The fact that this happened before my divorce was coincidental. But the timing, life is full of coincidences. She didn't look convinced, but she didn't press further. The article ran without any serious questioning of my business practices. I made the Forbes billionaires list the following year. Self-made female billionaire. Number 847 on the list globally, but who was counting? I never remarried, never even dated seriously. I went on a few dates here and there, a venture capitalist who bored me, a fellow engineer who was too similar to me, a marine biologist who was interesting but lived in Australia and wasn't interested in long distance. I didn't need a partner. I had my work, I had my company, I had enough money to do whatever I wanted, go wherever I wanted, help whoever I wanted. I endowed scholarships for women in STEM, donated millions to clean water initiatives in developing countries, funded research into next-generation filtration technologies, built wells in African villages, provided disaster relief after hurricanes and earthquakes. I made a difference, a real difference, not just in profits, but in lives. And I was free. Free from Derek's lies, from Vanessa's betrayal, from the weight of trying to be someone I wasn't. I'd died once, crushed under the weight of their cruelty. I'd been reborn with a chance to rewrite my story, and I'd written myself a happy ending. But the real epilogue happened 5 years after the divorce. I was at a charity gala at the Plaza Hotel, one of those tedious events where rich people congratulate themselves for donating money they'd never miss. I'd endowed a scholarship fund for underprivileged women pursuing engineering degrees, $10 million a year, covering full tuition plus living expenses for 100 students nationwide. They'd asked me to speak about the importance of supporting female entrepreneurs, about breaking barriers in male-dominated fields, about using success to lift others up. I gave a good speech, heartfelt, inspiring, the kind of thing that makes people feel good about writing checks. I talked about my journey from a $50,000 loan to a billion-dollar company, about the obstacles I'd overcome, about the importance of believing in yourself even when others don't. Halfway through, I saw him. Derek, sitting at a back table in a suit that had seen better days, shiny at the elbows, slightly too large like he'd lost weight and hadn't bought new clothes. He wasn't with Vanessa, of course. She'd moved on long ago. He was alone, nursing a drink, looking out of place among the wealthy donors in their designer gowns and custom tuxedos. Our eyes met. He looked away first. I finished my speech to enthusiastic applause, made my way through the crowd of people wanting to congratulate me, ask me for advice, pitch me their startups, smiled and nodded, and made appropriate noises while scanning the room. He was still there, hovering near the bar. I could have ignored him. Should have ignored him. I had nothing to say to Derek Chen, my ex-husband who'd tried to steal my life's work and ended up with nothing. But curiosity got the better of me. I approached him at the bar. He saw me coming and looked like he wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. "Derek," I said pleasantly, "I'm surprised to see you here. These tickets are $10,000 each." "My employer bought a table," he said. "I'm here representing them." "Oh, who do you work for now?" "Aquatech Solutions, small startup in the water filtration space. I'm their VP of Business Development." "How nice." I ordered a champagne from the bartender. "Are they a competitor of mine?" "Mira, everyone in water filtration is a competitor of yours. You own like 60% of the market." 47% actually, but who's counting? We stood in awkward silence. The bartender delivered my champagne. I sipped it, studying Derek over the rim of my glass. He looked terrible. Not just the ill-fitting suit and the weight loss, but the defeat in his eyes. The slump of his shoulders. The way he held himself like a man who'd given up. "You were wonderful up there," he finally said. "That speech, the scholarship fund, it's extraordinary what you've built." "Thank you. I just wanted to say, I know I don't deserve your time, but I'm proud of you, what you've accomplished. It's bigger than anything I could have imagined. It's what I always built, Derek. You just never noticed." "I know, I was a fool." "Yes, you were." He flinched but didn't argue. "I lost everything. The company, Vanessa, my reputation. I'm working as a consultant now, making $80,000 a year. I live in a studio apartment with a radiator that doesn't work. I'm 43 years old and I feel like a failure." "You are a failure," I said, not unkindly, just stating a fact. "I know." He took a long drink. "I wanted to apologize. For everything. The affair, the plan to push you out, the way I treated you during the divorce. I was greedy and stupid, and I hurt the one person who actually cared about me." "I don't accept your apology." His face fell. "Mira, I don't accept it because you don't deserve forgiveness, Derek. You didn't just cheat on me. You didn't just lie to me. You actively conspired to steal my life's work. You tried to force me out of my own company. You wanted me dead." "I never wanted you dead. In the ambulance, you told me to let go, to just die and make it easier for everyone." He went pale. "You remember that?" "I remember everything." We stared at each other. Something passed between us, some understanding that went beyond normal conversation. "The rebirth," he whispered. "It wasn't just you, was it?" My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "I remember dying too. Different timeline, but I remember. I got everything in that life. Half the company, Vanessa, the house in the Hamptons. We got Married, had 2 kids. I thought I'd won. And I was miserable. Vanessa cheated on me with a banker. The company I got from you, Chen Industries, I ran it into the ground within 3 years. Lost all the money, ended up divorced, broke, alone. I died of liver failure at 49, drunk in a hospital bed with no one visiting me. Good, I said viciously. And then I woke up, back in March 2019, 1 year before our divorce, just like you, and I thought I'd do better this time. I thought I'd appreciate what I had, make different choices. You didn't. I really tried, but I kept making the same mistakes. Kept going back to Vanessa, kept underestimating you, kept thinking I was smarter than I was. And you, he looked at me with something like awe. You were different this time. Colder, smarter, like you knew exactly what I was going to do before I did it. I did know, because I remembered too. So we both came back, both got a second chance. And I fucked up again while you... He gestured at me, at my designer gown, my diamond earrings, the aura of success that surrounded me. You built an empire. I learned from my mistakes, I said. You just repeated yours. He nodded slowly. Can I ask you something? What? Did you transfer those assets out of Chen Industries because you knew I was going to file for divorce? Or did you do it to force me to file for divorce? I smiled. Does it matter? I guess not. He finished his drink, set the glass down. For what it's worth, I know I deserve everything that happened. You were justified in every single thing you did. I just wish... He trailed off. What? You wish things had been different? You wish you'd been faithful, appreciative, honest? I wish I'd been smart enough to realize what I had before I lost it. That's the thing about second chances, Derek. They're wasted on people who don't learn from their first chance. I turned to leave. He caught my arm. Wait, just one more thing. Was any of it real? Did you ever actually love me? I paused, looked back over my shoulder at this man who'd been my husband, my partner, my betrayer. Once upon a time, I said slowly, I loved you more than anything in the world. I would have given you everything I had, no questions asked. I would have died for you. And now? Now I wouldn't give you a glass of water in the desert. I pulled my arm free and walked away. Behind me, I heard him whisper, I deserved that. Yes, he did. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did. If I feel guilty about the prenup forgery, the asset transfers, the systematic dismantling of everything Derek thought he'd get in the divorce. I don't. Because here's the truth about second chances. They're not about forgiveness. They're not about being the bigger person or taking the high road. They're about correcting mistakes, protecting yourself, and making sure the people who hurt you can never do it again. Derek and Vanessa thought they were so clever, plotting to steal my life's work. They underestimated me because I'd always been kind, always been giving, always put their needs before my own. They mistook kindness for weakness. They learned the difference too late. I built my empire twice. Once in my first life, naively, trusting people who didn't deserve it. Once in my second life, strategically, protecting what was mine. The second time was better. On the anniversary of our divorce, I stand in my penthouse and raise a glass of champagne to my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. To rebirth, I say to the woman in the glass, stronger, richer, freer than she'd ever been before, and to making sure the second time's the charm. Outside, the city glitters. My city now, built on my terms. Chen Holdings had just signed a major contract to provide water filtration systems to 12 developing nations. A deal worth $1.2 billion over 5 years. My disaster relief division was saving lives every day. My R&D lab was developing technology that would revolutionize clean water access for billions of people. I'd built an empire, a real one this time, with no dead weight, no parasites, no one to steal my glory or my money. Derek got exactly what he deserved, half of nothing. And I got everything I'd earned, the whole world. I drink my champagne and smile. 50-50? Sure, Derek. 50-50? You just should have checked what you were splitting first.